What's going on, Packers Nation? I'm your host, Taylor Bretl, keeping you up to date on the latest news of the green and gold Green Bay Packers. I welcome you back to yet another episode of Packers Latest, and a happy Tuesday to all of you guys watching out there. If you're watching this live or finding this video on the day of publish, it is Tuesday, and we are just 2 days away from another Packers game day. Crazy to think about, but a quick turnaround with that game on Sunday, getting a win there over Minnesota. And now you turn it over to Thursday, a Thanksgiving game against the Detroit Lions. Got a busy show today with a game just on Thursday, trying to get a lot of things in a little bit of time. We got to start it off. Does Jordan Love need a checkup? Does he need to see a doctor? Because I don't know what is going on. This is definitely a big headline across, a lot of Packers fans. Lots of people are talking about it. Is it time to check up on Jordan Love? There's my little pun for the day. But seriously, not really throwing the ball too much for Green Bay, especially over the last 4 games. Kind of feels like he's just absent, and this really isn't anything to him. He's not throwing the ball bad. He's just not really throwing the football. Let's look at some of these stats here. You look at his first 7 games of the season, was off to a hot start. 13 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions, 1,798 yards, a 70.9 completion percentage, and a 112.8 passer rating. Those are some MVP level numbers. Maybe the touchdowns could be up just a touch. But besides that touchdown to interception ratio is very, very nice to see. Nearly 2,000 yards within that stretch of his first 7 games. 71% completion, just about. That is pretty good. But you look at the last 4 games, just two touchdowns. That's it. Last 4 games, just 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. Only 762 yards for a 61.9% completion, which is good enough for an 82.7 passer rating. Love has been absent. He really has not been in the mix for Green Bay, and don't get me wrong, they've won their last 2 games. Love's doing all that he needs to do. In that Giants game, he did get hurt and come back. That's why he didn't have too many pass attempts in that one. I believe it was just 24. And in this win against Minnesota, just 21 pass attempts, completing 14 of those. But you got to look at the positives out of this. I mean, he's not causing turnovers or anything. I mean, just 1 over those last 4 games, just 3 interceptions as a whole on the season. But if this Packers team wants to make a push in the playoffs, they got to have all cylinders working on offense. And Jordan Love, your quarterback, not really getting too involved, that is definitely a very big one to cover. Once again, with those numbers, he's averaging just 190.5 yards passing per game in those last 4 in comparison to the first 7, where he was averaging just a touch under 257 per game. So that is a huge difference between the two. This isn't like a nitpick stat that I'm just trying to really dig into. This is definitely getting put on notice. And don't get me wrong, injuries, I think that has been a big part of this. I mean, Love's been playing without Reed for most of the year. He got hurt in that Week 2 game against the Commanders, but now you lose Tucker Kraft. Matthew Golden starting to be out a little more consistently, which you don't like to see. So maybe with them out, you don't throw it as much. You're not comfortable with the target options you have, but you still got your guys. You still got Romeo Doubs. You still got Christian Watson. Dontavian Wicks has been a Packer for a little bit now. You still got those guys there. Luke Musgrave in the tight end role now, who was the original tight end one over Kraft. So all these targets Jordan Love is familiar with. It's not like these are new faces that he has to figure out how to play with. But maybe they just got to, figure out the offensive play calling just a little bit. That's definitely also a question that lingers around with Matt LaFleur and how he calls the offense. It's looked pretty solid the last 2 games, scoring 27 and 23 points and going 2-0 within that stretch. But it is definitely something to note for Jordan Love, especially with a division game coming up. Don't get me wrong, the Packers have been great in their 2 division games, a win over the Lions in Week 1, and then that win last week over Minnesota. So nice 2-0 start to the season on in-division play. But now this is Thanksgiving, a big stage, a national stage. You're playing the Lions. Hard to beat the same team twice in a season, especially a Lions offense that is hot. Just got that overtime win against the New York Giants. But you look at Thanksgiving games, you look at Jordan Love. He's played 2 of them so far in his career. He's 2-0, has 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 542 yards, 71.7 completion percentage, which you look at both of those games to get that percentage, that's 43 of 60, and a 127.2 passer rating. So in those two games, Love has played great. Those two games coming against the Miami Dolphins and one of them being the Detroit Lions. That was in his first year as a starter. That game being in Detroit as well. Was nice to see what Love could do on that big of a stage. But it's a whole different season. It's 2025. You can look at the past, look at the numbers, feel great about them, but you got to look at the now, and they really have to start getting Jordan Love involved if they want to keep on winning, and they want to keep on winning comfortably. You really need all cylinders firing. But moving on, we're going to go over to the defensive side and look at Micah Parsons. He is playing like an MVP. Kind of what you expected getting a guy like Micah Parsons in Green Bay, but it's nice to see it just all fill out and truly work for this Green Bay Packers offense. This is per Packers Wire. They produce great content. Definitely recommend reading some of their stuff. So lots of notes on this about Micah Parsons and the seasons he is having. So Micah Parsons reached 10 sacks in just 11 games this season. He got 2 of those sacks in the win against the Minnesota Vikings. He extended his streak to 5 straight seasons with double-digit sacks to start his career. Absolutely insane numbers. He's only the second player in NFL history to begin his career with double-digit sacks in at least 5 consecutive seasons. And the other one, Reggie White, and he did that in his first 9 years, according to ESPN. So Micah still got he has to double what he's doing now to beat Reggie White's record. That makes you tip your cap to Reggie White, and that makes you tip your cap to Micah Parsons. Parsons also became the first Packer since Zadarius Smith in 2020 to record at least 10 sacks in a season. Zadarius Smith, remember that short stint with the Packers? He was very, very good. He had 12.5 sacks in that season in 2020, and he also had 13.5 sacks in 2019. Micah Parsons likely to pass both of those numbers. Got to see how the whole season plays out, but he is trending in a great direction. So that is pretty nice to see. One last little tidbit on this as well. Looking at his numbers through those 11 games, we talked about the 10 sacks. He also has 20 quarterback hits and an NFL best 60 pressures per next-gen stat. And this is a guy that gets doubled all the time, sometimes tripled. In that Vikings game, they were triple covering him sometimes, and it feels like he's taking, a lot of hits up here. Feels like he gets held on every single play, and he's still producing these numbers. Shows just how much of a driving force Micah Parsons really is. And Micah Parsons, his career high in sacks is 14 in the 2023 season, and he is on pace to break that with 15. Again, got to see how the season plays out. It's just what he's on pace for. It's not what you can say he's going to do. But hey, maybe he can surpass 15. Maybe he has another 2-sack game on Thanksgiving against Detroit. Who knows? But what we're seeing from Micah Parsons is what you kind of expected. But I believe, in my opinion, it's more of a step up than what I expected just because he's on pace to do things like get a season high in sacks. We've already seen him be one of the best, defensive players in the NFL, get all those pressures on the quarterback. But now that he can surpass these numbers that made him such a high target and such a high addition for Green Bay, it's pretty nice to see, especially being in just his first year. But we've gone on the offense. We've gone on the defense. Why not talk about special teams? Obviously a soft spot for the Green Bay Packers, but there are some pros within it. Let's talk about Daniel Whelan. What an unsung hero for the Green Bay Packers. Get him in the Pro Bowl. Start that trend on X. I've been seeing it everywhere to get Daniel Whelan in the Pro Bowl. If you would have told me entering the season the Packers would have arguably the best punter in football, I wouldn't really know how to respond to that. But hey, now I can respond to it confidently saying, yes, I agree with you. Daniel Whelan has been absolutely phenomenal for a special teams unit as a whole that has been rather shaky. Most of that being in the return game, a little bit of that being in the kicking game, trying to, balance McManus's health. But Daniel Whelan has been the true staple of the special teams department. He has been consistent. He has been one of the best, if not the best, punter in the NFL. You look at some of the numbers here, he is the highest graded punter on PFF. That's about some pretty good information if you want to see if he's the best punter in the NFL. That's a pretty good stat to look at, seeing that he's first among 32 others. And you look at that game against Minnesota, he had the punt that resulted in a turnover against Minnesota. Got to give credit to the, punt team as a whole, getting the Packers players to kind of push the return man into that football and then jump on it. A beautiful play all around, but Whelan has been able to pin these opponents deep time and time again. This was a great example in that game against Minnesota, and it resulted in a turnover with the return man touching that football, Packers being able to jump on it, and Whelan has just firing up the team. You know, you don't like punting the ball away because it means you didn't have a successful offensive drive, but Whelan has been a huge factor in making it a very hard offensive drive to follow up on the other end, and that's a big reason why this defense is having so much success, because the offense they're going against has such a long way to drive the field. But going into our last point, we talked about Thanksgiving. We know that game is coming up quick. Let's take a look at Green Bay's history in Thanksgiving games. It actually goes deeper than I would have thought. You know, with these Thanksgiving games, you get the teams that play every year like the Lions and the Cowboys, but the Packers have played a pretty good amount. This will be their third straight season playing on Thanksgiving. I mentioned Jordan Love earlier in the episode, 2-0 in Thanksgiving games. Last season against the Miami Dolphins, the season before, which was his first year as a starter, getting the win against the Detroit Lions in an upset win where they did not get their turkey leg, but they got a whole feast when they beat Miami. You look at them as a whole, though, just 16, 20, and 2 all-time on Thanksgiving. I did mention they have won the last 2. They've also won 5 of the last 7 games they played on Thanksgiving. So trending, you know, in an upward direction. It's nice to see, but not the greatest numbers on Thanksgiving, and I know this goes really far back, so you can kind of look at the more recent ones. That's why I threw in that tidbit. 5 of the last 7. Those are some nice numbers to see, but hey, it's Thanksgiving. Anything can happen. You're playing the Lions, who they did recently beat on Thanksgiving, but this is, I shouldn't say the Lions Super Bowl. I don't mean it like that, but this is kind of their staple game. You know you're going to have it every single year. Detroit playing on Thanksgiving happens every single year, and it's pretty neat to see for a team like Detroit that you know that you can always get that game, and it's neat being in division with a team like the Lions to have the chance to play them like the Packers will be doing for the second year out of the past 3 to be able to play Detroit. But that's all I got for you guys today for Packers Latest. A pretty busy episode. I'll make sure to get in a lot of the reports tomorrow with this game being on Thursday. Really see who's healthy, who we'll see on the field. Will Jacobs be back? I'll make sure to have all of those answered for you guys in the next episode. But for this one, I appreciate you tuning in. And as always, go Pack Go.